The British Motor Corporation Limited, BMC, was a UK-based vehicle manufacturer formed in the early 1952 to give effect to an agreed merger of the Morris and Austin businesses. BMC acquired the shares in Morris Motors and the Austin Motor Company, Morris Motors, the holding company of the productive businesses of Nuffield organisation, who owned MG, Riley and Wolseley. The agreed exchange of shares in Morris or Austin for shares in the new holding company, BMC, became effective in mid-April 1952. In September 1965, BMC took control of its major supplier of bodies, Press Steel, acquiring Jaguar's body supplier in the process. In September 1966, BMC merged with Jaguar Cars. In December 1966, BMC changed its name to British Motor Holdings Limited, or BMH. BMH then merged in May 1968 with the Leyland Motor Corporation Limited, which made trucks and buses, and who owned Standard Triumph International Limited and the Rover Company, to become British Leyland. So hello everybody, you're very welcome back to the channel. So yes, this is a history story with a little bit of a difference. So we've spoken in the past about, obviously, about Leyland tractors and about Morris tractors and the history of Leyland and the history of what they became, basically, and the Nuffield, where it started with Nuffield and Leyland and then into Marshall. But it wouldn't be fair unless we done justice to those companies, to see where they all amalgamated, where they all came together, as we've done with other companies like David Brown, how David Brown became Case, and so on and so forth. So this video is based around the history of those companies that, you know, made up what Leyland was and what Nuffield was. And it is heavily based, this video is heavily based around the motor trade, the motor end of things, but they are the same companies that had different subsections, obviously with the agricultural end of things, and with the commercial vehicle end of things, and of course with the cars, which was a huge one. And you're all very welcome back to the channel, and to everyone who watched the last video on Mapro, thank you very much. We got a good share of views on that video, just trying to ramp things back up again, and that video did push us over the 500,000 mark of views, and that's fantastic for a little channel like this, a one-man operation who does all the work himself. 500,000 views is, you know, for something that started out as a bit of crack, I'm delighted with that. 4,200 subscribers now and 500,000 views. I am over the moon with that. So yeah, hope everyone had a good week. This video is, you know, it's going to be in depth. There's a good lot of history in it. There's a lot of putting together and a lot of thinking about it. But I hope by the time I'm finished that everyone has a clearer understanding of what was the British motor industry in and around the 50s and 60s and what it became. So BMC was the largest British car company of its day in 1952, with 39% of British output, producing a wide range of cars under brand names including Austin, Morris, MG, Austin Healey, Riley and Wolseley, as well as commercial vehicles and agricultural tractors. The first chairman, of course, was Lord Nuffield, aka William Morris, but he was replaced at the end of 1952 by Austin's Leonard Lord, who continued in that role until his 65th birthday in 1961, but handing over, in theory at least, to the managing director responsibilities to his deputy, George Harriman, in 1956. BMC's headquarters were at the Austin Longbridge plant near Birmingham, and Austin was the dominant partner in the group, mainly because of the chairman. The use of Morris engine designs was dropped within the 3 years, and all new car designs were coded ADO from Austin Drawing Office. The Longbridge plant was up to date, having been thoroughly modernised in 1951 and compared very favourably to Nuffield's 16 different and often old-fashioned factories scattered all over the Midlands. Austin's management systems, however, especially cost control and marketing, were not as good as Nuffield's, and as the market changed from storage of cars to competition, this was to tell. And as I always say, if you have any history with any of these companies, if you owned any of these cars that we're speaking about today, if you owned a Nuffield tractor, if you owned a Leyland or indeed a Marshall, please drop a comment in the comment section and get the conversation going. If you had a Jaguar, if you had a Wolseley or a Riley, please drop a comment into the comment section. I know we're going back a few years now. Some of you of the more senior generation will have more experience, obviously, with the likes of Riley and Wolseley than I would have had. So moving on. So the biggest selling car, the Mini, was famously analysed by the Ford Motor Company, which concluded that BMC must have been losing £30 on every car sold. The result was, although volumes held up well throughout the BMC era, market share fell, as did profitability and hence investment in new models, triggering the 1966 merger with Jaguar Cars to form British Motor Holdings and the government-sponsored merger of BMH with Leyland Motors Corporation in 1968. At the time of the mergers, a well-established dealership network was in place for each of the marques. Among the car-buying British public was a tendency of loyalty to the particular marque, and marques appealed to different market segments, of course. This meant that marques competing against each other in some areas, though some marques had a larger range than others. The Riley and Wolseley models were selling in very small numbers. Styling was also getting distinctively old-fashioned with these cars, and this caused Leonard Lord, in an unusual move for him, to call upon the service of an external stylist. As well as the car manufacturing arms, the company had its own printing and publishing firm, the Nuffield Press, inherited from the Morris Motor Group. In 1958, BMC hired Battista Farina to redesign its entire car line. This resulted in the creation of 3 Farina saloons, each of which was badge engineered to fit various BMC car lines. The compact Farina model debuted in 1958 with the Austin A40 Farina. This was considered by many to be the first mass-produced hatchback car. A small estate version was produced with a horizontally split tailgate. Its size and configuration would today be considered that of a small hatchback. A Mark II A40 Farina appeared in 1961 and was produced right through until 1967. These small cars used the A-series engine. The mid-sized Farinas were launched in 1958 with the Wolseley 1560. Other members of the group included a Riley 468, the Austin A55 Cambridge Mark II, the MG Magnum Mark III, and the Morris Oxford 5. Later, the design was licensed to Argentina and produced as the Siam Di Tella 1500, Traveller station wagon, and Argenta pickup. This mid-sized car used the B-series straight 4 engine. Most of these cars lasted until around 1961, though the Di Tellas remained until 1966. They were replaced with a new Farina body style, and most were renamed. These were the Austin A60 Cambridge, the MG Magnete Mark IV, the Austin Oxford 6, the Riley 472, and the Wolseley 1660. And in 1964, the Siam Magneta 1622, alongside with the Siam del Terra in Argentina. Most remained in production until around 1968, with no rear-wheel drive replacement produced. And if your father owned a Wolseley, if your mother drove a Riley, please drop it in the comments. Looking at around the 60s and the 70s, I do remember a Wolseley in my parish many years ago. There was a collector. There was a Wolseley. It was an ugly looking thing. I never took to them. I think they had rust problems, as most cars did back in the day. But if you drove one, if you have any history with them, please let me know. So the third and largest Farina car was the Austin A99 Westminster Van Dam Place Princess 3-litre Wolseley 699, launched in 1959. They used a large C-series straight 6 engine. So anyone doesn't know what a straight 6 engine is, it's basically where the 6 cylinders run straight in line, whereas a V6 has 3 cylinders going that way and 3 cylinders going that way, and a flat 6 has 3 cylinders going that way and 3 cylinders or pistons going that way. So straight 6 has 6 cylinders all in line, as straight forward have 4 cylinders all in line. Moving on then, so commercial vehicles. So most BMC era commercial vehicles were sold as Morris, but these were sometimes Austin equivalents. Radiator badges on the larger vehicles were often BMC. With the merger of Nuffield and Austin interests, the Nuffield organisation's tractor range, the Nuffield Universal, was incorporated, of course, into BMC. In the 1950s and the 1960s, BMC set up 21 plants overseas, some of its subsidiaries and some as joint ventures, to assemble its vehicles. One was British Motor Corporation Australia, which was established in 1953 at the Nuffield Australia site at the one-time Victoria Park Raceway in Sydney. This facility went from marshalling area for fully imported Morris cars. Austins were up until then being assembled in Melbourne from an earlier Austin Motors establishment, to a facility for making CKD cars, to the local local fabrication and construction of these vehicles, engines and mechanicals. Denmark, unsurprisingly, was a particularly strong market for BMC products in Europe. In the post-war period, the Danish government closely regulated exports and imports to maintain the country's balance of trade. High-value imports, such as cars, were heavily taxed. From 1963 to 1975, a company was established in Spain to produce BMC cars under license. Its name was ATUI, A-U-T-H-I, Automotive de Tourism Hispano-Ingles, so Spanish, English, tourism, automobiles. The factory was in Pamplona in Spain, and when the production of Austin and Mini cars was discontinued, Sociedad Española de Automóvil de Turismo, aka SEAT as we all know, owned by the state and some banks and industrial investors, purchased the factory. After the takeover of SEAT by Volkswagen, SEAT made an internal resale of the Pamplona factory, formerly AUTHI or AUTUI, to Volkswagen, which soon started the production of the famous Volkswagen Polo. In 1964, BMC Turkey was established in cooperation with the British Motor Corporation. The Turkish partners retained the 74% of the capital, while 26% was held by the UK-based BMC or British Motor Corporation. And I want people to please just think for a minute about the amount of time and effort that has gone into researching this video, because there was quite a lot of time. I'm hoping it will do well, as I do hope all my videos will do well, but there is probably, I'd say, about 100 hours of research gone into this video. Believe it or believe it not, there probably is close to, between looking at videos and reading different articles online, reading things in different books, researching, yeah, as I said, mainly researching online and emailing a few different people. There's probably close to 100 hours gone into this video, which might only get a couple of hundred views or a couple of thousand views, I don't know. But if you can support the channel, if you're still watching this stage and you would like to support the channel, please, if you haven't done it so already, please subscribe, please like, and if you can, if you're feeling like giving away the price of a coffee or the price of a pint, you can super like the video, press the super like button, and you can donate a couple of euro or a couple of pounds sterling just to help support the video, because everything that I make on this channel goes straight back into this video. Now, 100 hours, if I was to go out to work for 100 hours, I could make more than I've ever made on this YouTube channel. But anyway, I love doing this, but the little bit of support would be much appreciated. Anyway, looking at government takeovers. So the Wilson Labour government of 1964 to 1970 came to power at the time when the British manufacturing industry was in decline, and declined that the remedy was to promote more mergers, particularly in the motor industry. Chrysler was already buying into the Rootes Group, and Leyland Motors had acquired Standard Triumph in 1961 and would buy, of course, Rover in 1967, becoming a major automotive force. BMC was suffering a dramatic drop in its share of the home market. Tony Benn, appointed Minister of Technology in July 1966, brought pressure to bear on the industry. So British Motor Holdings, so in mid-1965, BMC offered to buy its major supplier Press Steel and took control in September with 27,000 employees. 12 months later, BMC merged with Jaguar Cars, adding a further 7,000 employees. On the 14th of December 1966, BMC shareholders approved the change of its name to British Motor Holdings, and it took effect from that date. So British Leyland then, so little more than 12 months later, in January 1968, under pressure from the Labour British government and the Minister of Technology, Tony Benn, a further wave of mergers occurred in the British motor industry. BMH merged with the Leyland Motor Corporation, LMC, to form British Leyland Motor Corporation, so BLMC. And there was a hell of a lot going on around that time. The whole face of the English motor industry was changing. As you can see from those couple of years, from that last paragraph, a lot was going on. There was a lot of pressure, but it was, to regulate and to save the industry, because without mergers, a lot of these companies would have went under. BMC Limited, which contained most of the operations of the former British Motor Corporation, remained a subsidiary company of BLMC after the merger, although its name was later changed to Austin Morris Limited, reflecting the new Austin Morris division of BLMC, with the BMC name subsequently disappearing from public view. With the new conglomerate, the various marks were grouped together into two main divisions, based largely on the original BMC and LMC businesses, with the former mass market BMC marks becoming part of Austin Morris division of BLMC, whilst LMC stablemates Rover and Triumph joined Jaguar in the specialist division. This basic structure remained in place right up until the creation of Austin Rover Group in the early 1980s, by which time BLMC had been nationalised and renamed British Leyland Limited, later just BLPLC. Although by this time both Jaguar and Land Rover had been placed in their own independent subsidiaries, which were separate from the old BMC and LMC divisions. Following the merger with Leyland, a review of company records undertaken with the support of the new board author Graham Turner stated that at the time of the merger, 16 versions of the Mini were being produced, yielding an average profit of just £16 per car, while every Morris Minor sold lost the group £9 and every Austin Westminster lost £17. Now, that might not seem like a lot of money today, but back then, yeah, it was quite a substantial loss when you take off the fine margins that the manufacturer would have been dealing with on each unit. This helps to explain why the Westminster and the Minor were among the early casualties of the merger, as well as the introduction of the Mini Clubman, capable of being built for less but sold for more than the standard Mini, thanks to simplified, modernised front panels. Even the UK's bestseller, the Austin Morris 1100, had to be subjected to an emergency cost reduction programme, which removed about £10 from the cost of each car, applying changes that included the omission of lead sealing from body panels, which was £2.40 per car, removing provisions for optional reversing lamps, that was 10 pence per car, and changes to the body finish, which was 75 pence per car. Rebuilding the Cowley plant to include new automated body building facilities saved £2 in transport costs per car for bodies that no longer needed to be transported from the corporation's Swindon plant, and in the longer term, further transport costs were saved by concentrating assembly of the model at a single plant, rather than splitting it between plants at Cowley and Longbridge. Because of the high proportion of auto production costs represented by fixed costs that needed to be allocated over planned production volume, and the use in the 1960s of an investment appraisal criteria that were ill-suited to accounting for volume fluctuations and the rapidly changing value of the UK currency in the 1960s, the precise figures quoted may be open to challenge, but the new management's diagnosis that BMC profitability was insufficient to fund support and new model investments to cover its desperate range of brands and models, which was hard to refute. Throughout the 1960s, the failure of the UK government to join the European Economic Community meant that the company could not exploit lucrative European market due to high import tariffs. And we're kind of back there again today, aren't we, since the UK has left the EU. Whereas BMC's key rivals, Ford and General Motors, both had German subsidiaries producing and selling within the bloc, and were therefore immune from those import tariffs. So looking at the legacy then, so in 2002, BMC Turkey, a Turkish commercial vehicle builder originally set up by the British Motor Corporation to build and design under license in the 1950s, began exporting its vehicles to Britain. This allowed the return of the BMC brand to British roads for the first time in over 40 years. And today, the BMC logo, this BMC brand, is still owned by that Turkish BMC Turkey and the Qatari Air Force, I believe. So whatever's going on there, I'm not so sure. The Qatari Air Force own part of BMC now. I think it's 30% or something like that. But the BMC name is still alive. It's still out there. And of course, we know Land Rover, Jaguar are owned by Tata, the Indian company. So that says a lot about the, build quality and stuff of Land Rover. We'll say no more. Anyway, that's it for today. That's the video. I hope you liked it. I hope you found it interesting. Something a little bit different, more based on the motor trade, but it is nonetheless very important to get a grip of where those companies were coming from. It's still we're still dealing with Leyland and Nuffield and BMC, of course, who are agricultural or tractor manufacturers as well. So that's it. If you liked the video, again, please subscribe, please like, and please leave a comment. And I will see everybody next week or the week after. Take care.